Hi guys, welcome back. If you've looked at the news or newspapers at all in the last month, you've probably, like me, seen a whole host of stories about Range Rovers and people trying to insure Range Rovers, the shock horror that people are finding their insurance premiums are crazy high. At least that's according to the news stories circulating. So this was specifically interesting to me because I've recently bought a Range Rover Sport. I bought a 21 plate, and I also used to work in the insurance industry. That was quite a few years ago now when I was a lot younger, but it hasn't changed a huge amount, and I still keep up to date with what goes on in that industry. I have a fair understanding of how they set insurance rates, etc. So I'm in a unique position that I can give some sort of commentary on this. So what are the news stories saying about the subject? Well, of course, they're the usual, the most shocking points of view, the most extreme possible outcomes that you can imagine, that someone has either owned a Range Rover or just purchased a Range Rover and their insurance premiums have been quoted for them at like £14,000. I think the most I've seen, someone got a quote apparently for about £26,000 for a Range Rover. And a lot of the stories are, talking about quotes in the sort of £10,000 to £15,000 category per year. Now that's obviously very high. Most people would not pay that for insurance on pretty much any vehicle. But let's have a look at this, let's address the reality of this situation and ask if there's truth to this or if these are just scare stories, and if so, why? There is some truth to it, but there's a big caveat. And this goes the same for any motor vehicle, basically, that insurance is dictated by pretty much statistics. It's a mathematical equation at the end of the day. Premiums are generated, and they're generated on a series of risk factors, so the premium will be set, and this is all based on statistics. So if historically you live in a very high crime area, that would increase your risk factor dramatically and your premium would be weighted. It would be a lot higher. So let's have a look at some of these stories. They're talking about people living in certain areas of London. When you scratch the surface, the vehicles they've purchased tend to be the supercharged V8 Range Rovers, which is the high-end model, and these vehicles new are somewhere between £100,000 and £200,000. That's supercar territory, guys. So would anyone be really surprised if the news story was, guy in central London buys a Lamborghini and gets quoted £10,000 for his insurance for the year? No, that wouldn't be a surprise at all. But for some reason, because this vehicle is an SUV, it's a four-wheel drive type vehicle, and it doesn't look like a supercar, people are kind of horrified when they learn that it's going to cost £10,000 to insure it. Now, the price of the vehicle is a huge risk. So if the vehicle that you've just purchased is £100,000 to £200,000 worth of vehicle, the insurance factor must weight that into the equation. They've got to assess how much they're going to pay out if that thing is stolen. So if you live in a massively high crime area, i.e. central London, and you've bought a very desirable vehicle, and it happens to be a very popular vehicle, so this matters as well. The amount of that type of vehicle that's stolen will negatively impact the insurance premiums. So if you were, for example, to buy a supercar, how many people have got Lamborghinis in central London? Not that many, I would imagine. And how many of those get stolen? Again, not that many. And if people do buy a Lamborghini, they're probably not going to park it in the road outside their house. They've probably got a private garage and they're going to drive it in there, and it's going to have a whole host of security measures on the garage around their house, probably a fence to keep people out, etc, etc. So the thefts of those type of vehicles are going to be a lot rarer. But for some reason, again, people don't associate four-wheel drives with that kind of thing. So they're spending similar money, they're spending supercar type money on a four-wheel drive vehicle. Then they're acting surprised that if they just park it sat outside their house on the street, that the insurance premiums are high. let's talk about some of the stuff we can do that would positively affect your premium and what you really should be seriously doing if you're spending vast amounts of money on a vehicle. And this applies even if you're buying a vehicle for £40,000-50,000. You know, that's an expensive vehicle, and if it's also desirable, the idea that you're just going to chuck it out on the street and leave it out there overnight, or you're going to, you know, take it to work and just park it in the street all day, that's really unrealistic. You know, the likelihood of that getting stolen is very high, and that's why the insurance is going high, because the insurance company knows from statistics that that is likely to happen. So they're going to mitigate for that. They're going to cover themselves. They're not in the business of giving you an insurance premium knowing that they're going to then have to pay out a vast amount of money at some point in the next 12 months. They're there to make money. So if you're buying an expensive vehicle, you first really need to consider, you know, the position that you're in. What kind of house do you live in? Do you have a driveway? Do you have a garage? If you don't have a driveway, for example, but you have a front garden, it would probably be a lot cheaper to get the curb dropped and build a driveway on your house that you can put the car on than it would be to store the vehicle out on the street and then pay the insurance premium that results, especially for these high cost vehicles. So it might cost you £3,000 or £4,000 to get the driveway installed on your house, but if your premium's going to be £10,000, that's a hell of a saving, because it will bring the premium down a lot. Insurance companies will reward you, you know, they will charge you a lot less if you park your car overnight on your driveway. And actually the difference between driveway and garage isn't huge, because the statistics bear out that most people who say that they park their car in the garage, they don't actually end up parking their car in the garage all the time. So statistically, cars that insurance wise are supposed to be parked in the garage get stolen nearly as frequently as cars that are supposed to be stored on the driveway, because oftentimes they all end up stored on the driveway. So that's definitely worth consideration. If you haven't got the possibility of building a driveway on your house and you haven't got a garage, maybe look into renting a garage or a secure space that you could store the car. If you haven't got that, I would seriously consider, you know, whether you want to buy a luxury vehicle. And if you do, you're going to have to wear the insurance premium on the chin. You know, that's the nature of it, that it's to do with your circumstance. This isn't a specific Range Rover problem. The same would be said of any vehicle. If these people bought a Fiesta, which is, I think the last time I checked, the #1 most stolen vehicle, it's just that they're worth a lot less money. But if you bought a Fiesta and stored it outside your house in central London in a high crime area and you didn't have any garage or driveway, you're going to pay a lot more for your insurance premium than someone that parks it on the driveway or in the garage. That's just life. So consider your circumstances before you go and spend a huge amount of money on a luxury vehicle or a sports car. Then you have to think about where you park the car in the day. You know, if you work in the middle of town, again in a high crime area, and your work has no secure parking facilities and you're just leaving the car on a nearby street, that's going to throw your premium up, because statistically that is a very likely point at which your car will get stolen. Thieves are opportunists and they wander around the streets looking for nice vehicles, expensive vehicles, and when they see one down a street, they're going to try their luck. And electronically, they're able to get into these things with relative ease these days, and that's pretty much all makes a vehicle. So think about where it's stored in the day. You know, have a word with your work. Have they got a facility for that? If they haven't, look at nearby safe and secure facilities, or possibly think about not commuting in your vehicle at all and leave your vehicle safely stored at home in the garage or on the driveway and commute in a different way. That's going to reduce your premium. Before you buy a vehicle, get some insurance quotes to start with. And when you get those quotes, you can have a sort of fiddle around with the options in the quote process and see if anything brings the quote down for you. So for example, security measures is a big one. You know, that some insurance companies will give you a vast discount on premiums if you've got things like third-party immobilisers, trackers. All those things will make a difference, and it may even pay to ring the insurance company up and they can discuss that with their underwriters, who may be able to facilitate discounts on the premium for additional security measures that aren't available on the internet. The other interesting one that people generally don't know about is adding your spouse or partner. Now, it often asks, will anyone else drive this vehicle? And most of the time people select no, because they automatically assume that adding another driver to that vehicle is going to increase their premium. That will be true if the other driver was very young or inexperienced, or they had a lot of bad history in terms of convictions and claims and speeding tickets and things like that. But let's say your partner is of a similar age to you and they've got a reasonable driving history. Try adding them on as that additional driver, even if they don't particularly plan to drive that vehicle. It would be handy to have them on for emergency reasons, but you might actually be surprised, because there is a discount process known as insured and spouse. And that is because statistically, people that are together in a long-term relationship are less likely to drive irresponsibly. You know, historically, statistics bear that out, that married couples, for example, the guy is unlikely to drive around like a lunatic because his wife probably wouldn't appreciate that. That's generally how that goes. So there is sometimes a considerable discount on that. And I've actually knocked a couple of £100 off of an £800 premium before, just by adding my partner, who doesn't even have a very extensive driving history. Think about the model of vehicle you're going to buy. So if you've decided you want a Range Rover of some sort, then if you're going to get the supercharged deluxe V8 with all the bells and whistles on and a body kit and stuff, that's going to represent the highest possible premium. So for a start, if it's had any modifications that aren't standard, even if it's different alloy wheels, a different exhaust, a body kit, a respray, whatever it is, that will put your premium up. So I would avoid those type of vehicles. If you go for the high-end V8, which I might add is like ridiculous amounts of brake horsepower, they are in supercar territory, not very quick 0 to 60s, so they're also going to add to that premium because it's an incredibly fast and heavy vehicle. And the types of people that tend to buy incredibly fast vehicles also tend to have accidents due to the fact that they drive incredibly fast, funnily enough. It's interesting to note that even if you uprated your brakes on a vehicle, that will put your premium up. And you might think, well, that sounds crazy because brakes are a safety feature. Yes, they are, but what kind of person uprates the brakes on a vehicle that already has pretty good standard brakes? Well, the answer to that is someone who's going to drive that vehicle incredibly fast. So statistically, people that uprate their brakes on vehicles are more likely to have an accident. And insurance companies look at all this. I bought a 21 plate Range Rover Sport, white with a black roof. I'll chuck a picture up, you've probably seen it in the thumbnail anyway. And I bought the HSE Silver Edition. So that has a 3-litre diesel engine. You know, it's plenty powerful enough, and basically it isn't the most desirable of models. You know, it's a nice vehicle, I really like it, but it isn't the flashiest one available. It doesn't have the most powerful engine. So there's a start for you. Is that powerful engine really, really important to you? Because you can easily get a vehicle that has a less powerful engine, maybe, you know, the diesel autobiography. It has all the upgraded luxury interior features, the heated seats, the massage seats, the good stereo equipment, all that stuff. It hasn't got a supercharged V8 engine in it. And if you don't need that supercharged engine, if you're not some kind of sports driver or whatever, then just get the more sensible option, because the insurance company will reward you with a cheaper premium. if you're going to buy one of these vehicles, seriously consider, you know, if you can afford it, buy a newer version, because the newer variants are a lot less stealable. For that reason, you know, thieves are going to avoid them because the security features in them have been massively upgraded. The electronic features in them are a lot more complex, and apparently thieves are having a real tough time stealing those vehicles. So thieves aren't dumb. They're going to look around and steal the vehicles that are easy for them to steal. So they're going to look for the older models which they can get into really quickly. One of the ways they do that is through the fact that your key, when you walk up to the vehicle, the key kind of automatically lets the vehicle know that you're there, and you can then just open the door. Now, the thieves are able to work around this by basically relaying the signal from that key to the vehicle. They might have one person stood by your back door, one person stood near to the vehicle. That signal from the key to the vehicle is relayed, and then they can simply press a button and the car door will open up. One of the sensible things you can do is buy some Faraday storage. So this won't help you with your insurance premium, but it will stop your vehicle getting stolen, because if you put your keys in a Faraday box or a Faraday bag, that basically prevents the keys from sending out that signal, and the thieves won't be able to relay it back to the vehicle. So that's a really cheap option. You know, I've done that with mine. I also have what's called a ghost immobiliser on mine, so that needs a specific sequence of buttons to be pressed within the vehicle, and it could be anything within the vehicle, a whole host of different buttons you can utilise, and they have to be pressed in a certain sequence for the vehicle to operate. So it's a little bit less convenient, but of course, you know, we have to sacrifice that convenience if we want security. So with all these things considered, you know, we shouldn't be surprised when people that live in these places that select the highest spec, biggest engined, most desirable vehicles that there are, we shouldn't be at all surprised when these vehicles get stolen, and we shouldn't be surprised therefore that insurance companies are putting a considerable premium on them. So let's get to reality. You know, what did I get quoted? Because I went and got a whole bunch of quotes before I got my vehicle, because if they had been ridiculously high, I simply wouldn't have bought it. There's no way I'm going to pay £10,000 a year for insurance. Previously, I was driving a Ford Fiesta ST, and I was paying about just under £400 to insure the ST. I live in a rural area. You know, it's not completely cut off. It's like a small village, basically. I'm in my late 40s. I have a clean driving licence. I got no speeding fines on there. I haven't had any claims or convictions in the last 5 years. And I've got the full no claims, 9 years no claims. I've got more than that, but most insurance companies are only going to consider about 9 years of your no claims discount. And you can experiment with that as well. You know, if you go on some of the price comparison sites, that's where I would suggest you start to get a general flavour. If you go on your Go Compares and, you know, Money Supermarket and all that kind of thing, that will give you a really good idea because it compares so many different factors. The downside of those sites is that they tend to be a kind of one-size-fits-all approach, so they won't allow you to input more specific data about certain security measures that you've put on the vehicle. That's where it kind of pays to get directly in touch with one of the insurers. So I just use those websites to find the most likely insurers for myself. Then I go and get in touch with those people directly and get a quote from them and see if they can actually do anything about the added security features. So the Ghost Immobiliser I've got, for example, that reduced the premium slightly, but there was no ability on the price comparison site to input that. So that has to be done directly with the insurer. So with all that taken into account, I've got 21 plate, 3 litre diesel, Range Rover Sport, HSE. It's the silver edition. So I got some quotes and they ranged from anything from the biggest being £8,000, which was obviously not very good, and the smallest, which I selected, was about £850. So a huge difference in quotes. And I do wonder sometimes if some of these news stories, you know, they're just like getting a quote from kind of the worst possible scenario and then chucking it out there to make a really exciting story. And there will be people that whoever they go to, they're going to get a bad quote for all the reasons that we've just discussed. And even if they go direct to Land Rover, they might even be declined insurance because they represent such a high risk that the insurance company, it's just not worth their money insuring those people. So if you live in central London and you park your car out on the street all day and you park it outside the front of your work, don't be surprised when your insurance premium is huge because you've chosen a very highly desirable deluxe car that cost £80,000. You're going to pay a huge premium for that. And if you don't like that, don't buy that vehicle, you know, or do something about the other circumstances which are causing that premium to be high. But you're not entitled to low insurance premiums just because you feel that you should be, or that you have had them in the past, or that people you know have them. It's based on maths. It's pure and simple that, you know, it's looking at your statistics and it's shaping a premium. If you couldn't do that, insurance companies wouldn't exist because they wouldn't make money. So my premium was twice the amount my Fiesta, and that's pretty good considering the vehicle is like 3 times the price of my Fiesta and my insurance just doubled. You know, I was very, very pleased with that indeed. I've got no issues with that whatsoever. So if you're thinking of buying an expensive vehicle like a Range Rover, do go and do this first. Don't just be put off. I've spoken to people that have said, oh, I was thinking about getting one, but now I'm not going to bother because I've read the story in the news and, you know, the premiums are ridiculous. Well, that will probably be very misleading, and I doubt very much if most of you will get premiums anywhere near to what you're seeing in the news right now. So check it first. Then once you're happy, you can go and get your vehicle and then get your premium sorted. Guys, I hope that sheds some light on the subject. Like all news, they're always going to put the worst case scenario out there. There's no news story if you just say, oh, some people might pay a really high premium, but most people are probably paying a pretty reasonable premium. That's not an interesting story at all. So of course it's got to be the most extreme scenario, and that can end up being really misleading. I'm going to do a review on this Range Rover pretty soon. I am super pleased with it. The guys at Marshall's, which I bought from, they're a Land Rover dealer. They have been absolutely awesome. They've been very, very helpful. They treat you really, really nicely. It's an absolute pleasure to do business with them, and I am super, super happy with the vehicle. I've had, you know, zero serious problems with it. There's a couple of little tweaks and things that I've had to get sorted out. It's a second-hand vehicle. It's got about 20,000 miles on it, but they really are tiny, and they were all looked after by Marshalls incredibly quickly. So I thoroughly recommend it. It's a joy to drive in. I would not want to drive in anything else since I've been driving this. I'm very, very pleased with it. So a review will be coming, and I'll give you my complete honest opinion on it. I'll let you know all the little quirks that I found, and you know, how they got sorted out, because that's another horror story that you hear. Oh, don't buy one, you know, you'll be absolutely rinsed by the place you buy it from. It'll cost you thousands of pounds to get it fixed. And again, if you go and buy a Land Rover with 120,000 miles on the clock, and you buy it off an auction for cash, and then you get it home and you think, oh my god, you know, it's going to cost me £19,000 to get it seriously roadworthy after a mechanic looks at it. Yeah, that's what happens when you do that. That you shouldn't be surprised about that. You know, use your brain a bit. If something looks too good to be true, it probably is. So if you want to buy a luxury vehicle, it's going to cost you luxury money, and you probably should buy it off a legit luxury vehicle dealer that actually represents the brand and actually supplies the warranty that you need with it. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope that was of use to you. Take care. Have a great day.